and you've got columns, right? There's picas and points, and it's kind of how they measured everything. And so you would have a standard galley, okay? And then we did a lot of advertising typography, okay? So they would give us the size of the page, half page, quarter page, and that was our outline. And then within that, we would set they would give us an artist rendition of what they would want, okay? Pictures, type, etc., and then we would compose it, okay? We did a lot of work for advertising agencies, pharmaceuticals. It was a good recession-proof company because until the technology changed.
Yeah.
Because we did a lot of annual reports. We did a lot of stuff for Fortune 100 companies, and then we did a lot for the advertising industry. You know, which was kind of very interesting. Met a lot of interesting people. Okay, everybody's back. Good. So one of the things I think we'll talk about is life has seasons, right? And I'm not going to read this. It's from Ecclesiastes 3:1-8. You know, basically there's a time for everything. Everything, there's a season, right? And a purpose under the sun. So when we look at life has seasons and has financial seasons as well, whether you're in, you know, high school of some sort, you're college, maybe you're doing basic, you want to live independently, you're living at home, you're dating, you're engaged, you want to get married with kids, empty nesters, retired, widower, you know, there's all different sections in here. I was talking to Jim. Jim's been retired, but he's still working. It's like, how much is enough for retirement? And it all depends on your budget and, you know, how much money you're spending. Everything from an expense perspective goes up. My father's paying $9,000 a year just for his health insurance. He's 90 years old. It's not like we can go shop him. It is what it is. Assisted living starts at $7,000 a month. I mean, it's all, you know, very, very expensive. One of the things, back to retirement, I knew two people that had pensions from companies, only to find out that the pension funds went broke, and they went from getting $4,000 a month, which was quite comfortable, to $1,000 a month. And what do? Yeah, probably have to go back to work at that point in time. And the one guy I met was renting a car through Enterprise, where they pick you up at the house. And so I was talking to the guy, and that was his story. I felt bad for him. He said he had his whole thing planned, and that wasn't what was really going to happen. All right, so we've talked about living wage. I'm not going to go through the math on how they came up with it. They just did. But one of the things I wanted to do was, and we did this exercise with the basic group, and I'm not sure how we're going to do it with this group, is we'd like to walk through what is a budget, and just see if we can come up with some consistent, you know, ideas of what that looks like. So let's see how we can do this. In my mind, I had it in 4 different teams. You had, you know, single, married with, you know, it could be 2, 4 kids. So maybe we just do, you know, 3 groups. So I'll need a scribe for each one of these, and maybe we just go through the budget and we'll try to figure out what's an average cost on certain things, and we'll add them up at the end and say, does it work, yes or no? Does that make sense? I think it's just a visual. And at the end, everybody will get a, you know, a budget. All the sheets we're going to go through will be 3 sheets: a spending plan and a personal financial statement. You'll get one to take with you if you want to fill out at home, or, you know, at least have it as a reference point. So I need 4 people to volunteer. You want to be single or married?
I'll be married.
There's no wrong answer. Who wants to be married with 2 kids? I got 2 kids and 4 kids. Not you.
I have a pen.
You got a pen? So you got a pen?
Yes. Yeah.
You got me a pen? All right, here we go. All right, so single on your sheet there. you got $55,000, and you're going to get 3 months' salary in cash, so $13,750. Married, $72,000. You're going to have $18,000 in cash, right? Married, 2 kids. You got $23,750 in cash, and that should be on the top of your sheet. And 4, you're going to have $30,000 in cash. Okay, so out of the gate. So if you can see the sheet, I've got them each broken down. You've got your net income, onto your gross income, and then taxes taken out. So you've got net income. So for example, for $55,000 for the a month works out to be $3,708. So Zach, you got $3,708. Don't spend more than that. Okay, and then you can see for each one what your net cash is at the end of the day. Okay, so maybe we'll just do this collectively, and we'll see if the scribes can keep the answers. That would be good. All right. So the first question here is tithing. Okay, so what does that look like? And when we did basic, it was kind of all over the place. It wasn't necessarily Tony stepped in and kind of gave some examples of what we should do. So if you go by Crown or you go by Dave Ramsey, they're going to suggest a 10% tithe. But that's a personal decision you guys can make. But for the examples of this, I say we put a 10% tithe in out of the gate, because again, it is all God's. We're stewards of it, giving back. Now the next largest one is housing, right? So we could rent a house, we could buy a house, we could assume a house. How much of that income at the 4 different levels should we really put into a house? Renting, the cheapest I found in Summers Point was $1,600. There's one in Bargaintown for $1,650, and there's one on Mill Street for $3,000. Garowitz is between $2,100 and $2,200 a month for rent. Married, what are you going to pay in rent? What are you going to pay in a mortgage? What are you going to? You're making $72,000.
Takes the 6 or upper.
All right. The concept here is we need to come up with a monthly payment, right? Can you find something for $1,400, $1,500, or $2,000?
$1,800.
I mean, you can clearly rent something for $1,800, right? $1,800. So Zach, you can do the same thing as far as what from how much you want to spend on rent. Okay.
Count if you live in your parents' basement.
You have to move out of your parents' basement.
Soon.
So here's the deal. We took 1,000 square feet of our basement when we lived in Turnersville, and we put a kitchen, 1-bedroom bath. We made an apartment downstairs, right? And we let the kids live there, but they have to pay rent. Now, the deal in my head was every year you double the rent. Okay, by year 3, they're out. It works every time. So I had a friend of mine. I told him the same thing. I said, you gotta give him some increase. He didn't charge him anything for 5 years. They were in debt after 5 years. I said, they can take the money and give it back to him. Okay, at least it's for savings, right? You've got to do something. All right, so back to the example here. It's $8.60 per thousand per month of money that you're borrowing, just as an example. So if you can find a $200,000 mortgage, it's $1,720 a month. Just spitball. Okay. The thing with Zillow, if anybody's looking on Zillow and it tells you how much the monthly payment is, it's already figuring in a 20% down payment. Most people miss that, especially some of the kids at work. They want to put 3% down. They can't afford to buy the houses that they're looking at because they don't have the cash down. I was having a conversation a few minutes ago with someone. Let's say they're looking at a house, but you've got to, if you put all your money down on the house. I'll use this kid that's looking at the house today. The roof is 32 years old. It's $12,000 to put the new roof on. I guarantee you, the first year he's going to need a roof. So he's putting less money down so he can escrow some of that. He won't have a whole 12,000, but he'll have a good portion of that, knowing that that's a known expense beyond his savings that he's going to put in the house near term. So he's going to actually try to borrow the maximum amount for the loan amount, so he's got enough cash to go forward. I have a quick story. A friend of mine asked me to talk to his son-in-law who was moving into the area, had sold a house, had quite a bit of cash. We went through 2 sessions of kind of just, establishing his budget and understanding what everything was. They found a house that they liked, and he had said they had $100,000 from the previous sale of their house. My suggestion was to put down like 30 or 40,000, keep the balance in cash, because the house is going to need some things. So my experience is typically nobody takes any of my advice, and they go the opposite way. So he put the whole 100 down on the house. It still needed issues. 3 months later, he lost his job, and just about lost everything. So he didn't have a cushion built in. The house still had problems. In his mind, he wanted to have the lowest possible payment, but he didn't have any margin. And his father-in-law had to bail him out. So if he would have done the other thing, if he would have put 30 or 40,000 down, he would have had 60 or 70,000 in the bank. He would have been able to take care of the house issues and gotten him through several months until he would have gotten a new job. Okay, so on one side of it, you don't want to be house poor, but on the other side, you want to have some equity and some say in what that looks like. Chuck, you got all these kids. How much are you going to pay for rent? How much are you going to pay for a mortgage?
Around 2,400.
Okay. Now, there's different models to follow through this, but what I wanted to do is kind of say, what's everybody feel the expenses are, add them up, and see if we're close. So there is a template which I can give you that kind of says whether you're within the range or not. Typically 30% is what they're going to allow you to.
Your graphic up there, is that for the house on the left or the right?
The numbers.
I'm not following the graph.
I'm just giving you an I'm giving.
If I'm making that amount of money and I have a wife or children, I'm not sure buy that based on the left. I'm gonna get something a little small.
Right. So the one on the left was an example I just pulled up. It's a new townhouse, and it goes $341,000. Right. Now, my point in giving you this illustration is because everybody looks at Zillow and they'll come up with a monthly amount that it is, but they're not showing that it's. You got to come up with 20%. You got to come up with $68,000 in cash to buy that house to make that payment. That's what they're not showing it. So I just put this up as an example that it's $860 for every $100,000 you're going to borrow. I back into the numbers, right? So let's say you can afford $2,150. That buys you a $250,000 mortgage. Plus whatever money you have for down payment, that kind of tells you the price range you're in to buy the house to stay in those numbers.
I don't think my 2,400 was
Not for the budget, unfortunately. Trish, what do you think? You want to?
I'm working.
You're working on it? All right. All right.
I got some numbers. What do you want to know?
Well.
We're 10%. Okay, so I'm married with 2 kids.
Right.
My net income is $5,854.70.
Right.
I'm going to try 10% of that, which is $790. She said $794. Food and groceries are $800 a month. Housing is $1,700 a month. There is no car payment. Tony and I started told each other no car payment. So I don't know how to do a car payment.
No, you don't have to. I'm just saying most people have something that they owe on.
Yeah. I have insurance maintenance $120, gas repairs goes $200, personal care and clothing is $50, and cable, cell and internet is $80. He was probably over there laughing at me. You probably know the numbers. He probably got them wrong.
But part of this exercise is to have both spouses have an understanding of what the numbers are.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I have
She
food and
looks
groceries
at it once in a while,
800.
she doesn't remember. She just says, I'm glad you're doing that.
No,
Right.
this is-
Thank you, Tony.
This is married with 2 kids.
Yes.
So I had it.
You probably ought to raise your numbers a little bit. Trust me, we were married with 3 kids, those are falling short, especially the groceries.
Well, maybe I was married with 2, so I'm going off now.
No.
800 for food and groceries.
Okay. I mean, there's no wrong answers. At the end of the day, does it work or does it not work from a spending perspective?
Yeah, no school loan, no entertainment, sorry. None of that happened.
No cable, right?
No, not cable, right, cable. No cable, I still on internet at $80.
No streaming sessions, right?
Right.
What about hair, nails, and shoes?
The beautification process? Okay. What if somebody's getting married? Not that I know anything about that. Did you save for that one? All right, so let's run through this. So, Zach, where'd you end up with housing?
1175.
Okay. And food. So, married with 2 kids was 800. Chuck, what's your food bill?
I haven't figured that one out.
If they're all boys, double it.
Yeah. I'm a girl, so I can go cheaper.
Yes. I remember having a sleepover at the house with the kids at sleepover, and we're making pancakes. We're through box 1. You know, it's like it's volume and scale. You're not going for quality here. It's all volume and scale. These friends of ours lived in our neighborhood, and they were having guests over like a Thursday night, and they made all this food. You know, she was working, so she had it in the refrigerator, and the guys came home, they played football, and said, oh, snacks. They ate the entire dinner. Okay, so they get home, and they got company coming like a half an hour, they got nothing in the refrigerator, so they had to do takeout. So he ended up buying a used refrigerator and put it in the garage and said, kids, that's your refrigerator. You know, anything in there is yours, don't touch our refrigerator. Because they'd come home and devour everything. All right, so what else did you have for the other ones? That the kids' health insurance. That's
See, these are monthly calculations.
correct. They're all monthly.
Yeah.
What was the question? Just
Insurance.
My job is good insurance.
But the deductible days are killers.
Yeah.
You know, we've got some kids that just turned, I guess, 27, so they're off their parents, and the parents like snuck the note under the door saying, "You're on your own, buddy," and they're looking at them going, you know, $3,000 and $4,000 deductibles. So, it's cheap, but it's not cheap if you have any issues. You know, so it's kind of expensive. All right, so while the goal is fill the numbers out. At the end, we'll do a quick recap and see, you know, does it work or does it not work, and then is it realistic? There's guides in Crown, kind of gives you kind of examples of what the actual spends are in percentages. I'm not throwing you the wolves, but just, you know, we did it with the basic because they didn't really have a point of reference. But a lot of the folks we've run to in my previous job was you had both male and female working, right? But if you look at the second line down where it says child care, and these numbers unfortunately are pretty accurate. You know, they're paying $17,000 for one child in daycare, $34,000 for 2 kids in daycare, and $40,000 for 3 kids in daycare. And the one guy I know is paying like $2,800, and the kids are only there 3 days a week, and he's got 2 kids. And I'm going like, you're working just for the daycare. It doesn't. You really need to look at those things. So the income really has to go up in those situations, but you're spending more on, you know, food, car, you know, dinners because you're swinging by Chick-fil-A and dropping $60 versus, you know, having the time to make a meal. You're chasing a lot of dollars. Jim and I were talking about advertising, and with today it's a lot harder to get away from TikTok. Not that I do that, but you know, Facebook, and you've got all these ads that just keep coming by your phones and whatnot to buy and contrast what, you know, what John has and what I should have, and that type of thing. So it's again, back to the Amazon thing. I can get anything I want probably within 24 hours delivered to the house. You know, sight unseen. It just goes on my credit card. It's stupid simple. But do I really need it? You know, from a budget perspective.
What does the Bible say?
gotta provide all your needs
Right,
according to his riches and glory.
right.
Not necessary.
Not your
It
wants.
says God has the power to give wealth, and with it there is no sorrow.
Right.
So, that's a big factor too.
It's, we get stuck in the feelings and the wants and the life in the now and the contrast. Because again, I deal with more of the younger generation. They're looking at their peers or what they have and what they don't have. My parents' generation wanted us to have something better than they had. Not that it was terrible, but their first house was $10,000. It wasn't that hard. Now everything is dramatically more expensive. All right, has anybody finished their tally sheet? Chris?
I came up with, my net income was 7208. I put in giving,
Mm-hmm.
groceries, utilities, I had electric, gas, water, and I did housing, car payment, insurance, gasoline, and then health insurance. Those are the figures I put in, and I came in at $5,900.
Okay.
I'm,
You're under.
right, and I haven't accounted for making any savings.
Right.
Clothing, personal, school.
The wife's gonna stay home and take care of the children.
Well, thank you for that.
Entertainment will be a sunset.
Or you can take.
We'll walk to the beach.
Yeah, occasionally it used to be when the McDonald's would have the dollar menu, you could swing by and pick up two coffees for $2. But yeah.
I'm going by my mindset.
Yeah.
From what it was probably about 20 years ago or so, and those other things like personal vacations and savings. When you were in that situation, you just didn't have them because you made that sacrifice.
Right.
Working off of one income.
Mm-hmm.
For myself, I worked 3 jobs at one time.
Right.
And so that's my mindset, where I'm coming from. I know that's not everybody's mindset. We have family who both parents work, and they have a baby who's about 6 months old,
Mm-hmm.
and they're toiling over child care, and they're seeing the expense.
And that's realistic,
It is realistic.
34,000
But
for a nanny.
You said it yourself,
yeah.
You're working to pay for that child care, where you could stay home and raise your kid.
Right, and that's a sacrifice.
Sacrifice.
It's but the point of the exercise is really, we'll see when Chris finishes his, if he's going to be successful at this or not.
I left myself $4.
$4, yes, a month. Mm-hmm. Okay. But again, savings is intentional, giving is intentional, and again, I think the biggest one on here is going to be the housing. Where do you end up living, or renting, or buying, and when's the right time to do that? You don't want to be overextended. But my concern in looking at, from a historical perspective, my dollar is going to be worth 60 to 70 cents in 10 years. You're paying back with cheaper dollars as you go forward. That's the concept, but you still have to get through the day and you have to live. I think it's more important to make sure you save and have a cushion. And one of the other questions that came up is, the general 6-month savings, I think, is over here. If you're saving for a house, it's got to be an addition. So again, that might be a second job. Now, it's easier when we're talking with the basic group, say 2 jobs, multiple things going on at the same time. It was what it was. But once you get to more of the professional level, it becomes more difficult being from the employer side of things, because people that will now start coming in, and now they're working night jobs, they're working other jobs, and it's sacrificing up against what their primary job is, and we have to have that harder conversation. So if you can work it out, great. If not, sometimes that's a bit of a conflict, because they'll come in late, they want to leave early, they can't work Fridays anymore because they're working Southern Gate. At some point you have to have a conversation. You need to choose, right? Or if there's different ways, we offered overtime, we spot bonuses on certain things that get done. Sometimes they don't want to do that. I'm going, when I worked in Philly, we had some people that just ran into some hard times. So hey, you want to work overtime? 12 hours of overtime a week, guaranteed. You want to work Saturdays? Not a problem. You get this, and this done. There's a $1,000 bonus in it for you. So we tried to be accommodating. It's a give and a get, right? So for the good employees, we tried to make that happen and do some things like that so that they don't get distracted. Trish, how'd you make out?
I have $33.17 left over, but we are having no fun.
Tony, that's Chick-fil-A once a month.
No, it's no eating out at all. No eating out, no childcare, no entertainment, no vacation, nothing.
Nothing.
That's how he likes that.
Nothing. So what was your rent payment or your housing?
Mortgage is $1,700 a month.
All right, I had $1,750. Okay, that's cool. All right.
What else?
My mortgage?
How much did you end up with?
Total? So I left myself $4.
$4. Okay, got it. All right, that's good margin. Zach?
Yeah, I left myself with $600.
Oh, you missed something.
I might. But, I'm looking for rent. I'm looking for a place that covers utilities as well. So I'll be shopping around.
How much you gonna budget for that?
$1,100.
Nope, you gotta go higher.
No.
Greatest I see.
What's that?
That's the greatest I see.
Yes. Look, there's, and again, there are resources, and I can lead you to them, that give you every category of these and what the base percentages, are historically averages at every, milestone of pay, and they're guidelines, but I think, the housing is the biggest one, food is more expensive, insurance, right, and your transportation. They're your four big ones. So if you can kind of minimize those to some degree, but Chuck's got 4 kids over here. He's got to feed them and house them, and Victoria's got to run the house, and there's a lot to that.
I think we all come to these with our own life experiences,
Mhm.
and I was the youngest of 9, and I wore a lot of hand-me-downs
Sure.
and things like that. So you adjust for that. I'm going to come up with a figure here in a minute for you to show you what I have left.
All right, so
I had $238.
unfortunately, that doesn't go very far today.
No.
Yeah. But the point of the exercise is that, everybody has a number. Now, some people are actually negative because you're using credit cards to pay for things, and you don't really see that until you put it on paper. We can't be like the government and spend 34% more than we make, and some people actually do that. And you hit a wall at some point, and you can't. You got to resolve it.
They have a number and then they have a thing that's a deal breaker or not.
Right.
Like, I can't, I'm being sarcastic when I say, I can't do without Comcast or Netflix, what would I do?
Right.
I definitely need to have neither one of them and work just fine.
No, I get it. Can that make sense? So that you do is you get a budget sheet and take it home and fill it out and figure out where you're at. Financial statements. And I'll breeze through this only because if you're going to apply for a mortgage or a loan, or you're going to have some sort of business dealings, you're going to have to come up with those. So the budget helps. That shows you your cash flow, and your balance sheet is kind of what you own and what you owe, right? So it's putting basically those statements together: your tax records, your debt statements, your mortgage, your equity, your car loans, your credit cards, your employment records. If you have any investments or any property, and basically any other debts and documentation for that. Basically, and again, you'll get one of these too. It's your spending plan. So you're putting everything in the categories, kind of like we talked about. I think that's where the conversation comes, and then it's a reality point of what you can have. And either there's not enough money to do it, or you've got to look at the expenses and really, cut back on whatever that looks like. And then from there, you can then build your monthly, plan. I like to have people do it monthly, quarterly, and annually, just so you have a overall view, because there are going to be certain expenses that only come quarterly that you need to record into your budgets, your insurances and things like that, right? And then your balance sheet, your professional statement. as far as what you owe, assets, and your liabilities, and if you're positive or negative. So I think that's the homework. Yes.
You may have just described this, but what's the difference between a budget and a personal financial statement?
All right, the personal financial, so that's your assets and your liabilities. Your budget's your cash flow, what comes in and what goes out, okay? And then your financial statement is what do you own, right? Whether it's cash, stocks, bonds, property, and then what do you owe? So it's what your assets less your liabilities, and that's hopefully it's a positive net worth at the end of the day. So you're going to go to the bank and you want to borrow $250,000 for the house. They're going to say, okay, Chuck, how much money do you make? How much money do you save? How much money do you have? Where's your collateral? Going through that now with another situation. And it's all about risk. You need to get to the underwriters and to actually talk about how they see you as a risk factor. And they're going to look at your credit score. That's all the stuff that goes into this. So the more you can go to them and be prepared and be proactive and tell them and show them that you're in charge of your finances and you're good with it, the better off you're going to be. It's just, and if you can get to that conversation, it's a win fast, lose fast conversation in the way I look at it. Okay, so the other to do, or the recommendation, after my physical, I usually go to my binder, or I try to. It's a little messy at the moment. And it's where you have all your information, your life insurance, your tax records, your employment, your investments, your properties, your taxes, your vehicles, your maintenance, your debt, et cetera, right? Other obligations, your legal documents, what your financial plan is, what maybe your goals are, and it's the sheets that we have here, right? It's in one place, and both, husband and wife can actually, see it, understand it. Maybe they only look at it once a month, it's fine, or once a year, but at least you have an understanding of where the money is coming in from, and where's it going out to. So I'd recommend something like this, or a shoebox, or something where you've got a way to kind of. I used to use shoeboxes. Couldn't figure out where all the money was going, so we got a shoebox and we wrote all the receipts and what it was. At the end of the month, they figured out it was formula and diapers. But we're spending more than we had, and it's like, where's it going? And it was the one thing I calculated poorly on. One of the other things, a couple of us were talking about retirement, and I can't find it, but I find no biblical reference to retirement, other than Numbers 8, where at 50 years old, you must cease from working to perform the work the priests were doing, but they shall minister, and mentor and assist the younger pastors. It didn't say they're retired at 65 and you're done. So everybody needs to kind of look at that. What does that look like? Kind of the history of retirement. American Express in 1875 started the first pension plan. In 1935, the Social Security Act, developed a plan to start covering workers, but it really didn't start until 1940. So you had to be 65 to retire. What was the average life expectancy of a man in 1935? 59. They were kind of gaming you. Okay? Women was 64. Right? So let's say you got to the first payment. What do you think you got?
$12 more.
22. So you're living high on $22 a month. 22.54 actually. Okay. Now what's the life expectancy in 2025 of a man? Yeah, it's only 75. Sorry. Women's 80. The average Social Security is $2,000 a month. So, but when they set it up and they set the annuity up, there was less people that were going to draw on it. Now more people are going to draw on it, and it's way longer. So just as a point of reference, it's been going bankrupt for years, but they say within 10 years, if nothing changes, it'll be defunct. Go bag. it's just one of those things, you get 10 minutes to get out of your house, there's a hurricane coming, there's a storm coming, there's a death in the family, you have to leave, you know, and what do you have, you know, that you need to have access to if something happened, right? My mother always took her cash stash, her purse, and her wedding album. I don't know why the wedding album, but that was the three things she grabbed, you know, when you gotta go, you know. So obviously it's cash, your insurance cards. Let's say, you know, Verizon went out the other day, everybody's in dither because they couldn't communicate, they couldn't get any information. So what do you need with your prescriptions, medications? It's just good to have some of that stuff already, you know, put together in case you have to leave in a hurry. You know, at least have it in one place where you can go. Maybe titles, some statements. Again, it's more of a, you know, the wildfires in California. We have a customer thought I lost, you know, he had minutes because the fire had turned the corner, the wind was really, and it took out their entire block within minutes. So they got out of the house, but they got out with nothing. Where's your stuff? Where's you didn't take his computer, it's all gone. I mean, there was nothing left. So they're having to rebuild all that. So it's best to either have that in a different spot or have copies of it on Google Drive or somewhere. Your affairs, your legacy. And this has come up with, only because it's a realistic conversation, I'm dead, now what? Okay? I know somebody actually bought the book, and it goes through and you lay out your life, basically. Okay? You know, what's your desires? I mean, the most important thing is, do you have internal security? You know, have you asked the Lord to, you know, to be your Lord and Savior? You need that eternity first and foremost. The rest of the stuff is just stuff. If I'm gone, it doesn't really matter. But, you know, I want to leave the family in a position where they don't have to worry about certain things. You know, I've got some pretty wealthy friends, and they're going through financial assessments of their estates and things like that, and they tell me certain things, and it's like, oh, they've accumulated a lot now, and it's going through taxes and things like that. Most of us don't have to deal with that, but it's a reality question. There's a 100% death rate in the world. At some point, we're going to expire. You know, do you have your affairs in order? You know, like I said, my father's 90, so I'm his legal POA financially and health-wise, and we had to, you know, clean up certain things and take care of some things that weren't taken care of for a while. But it's best if you have all that stuff in order, ready to go when you need it. Thoughts on the time, things that could do better, things we didn't talk about, things you want to talk about. What did I miss? Question.
Long-term care.
Right. It's expensive. You know, and you need to look at that. I mean, like I said, the average is probably $7,000 a month for assisted living. Probably double that for, you know, full-time nurse care, or you become a ward of the state. It's not my expertise, but you're looking at thousands of dollars, you know, in payments, you know, for insurance. It's not inexpensive. And now, if you did it at 40, it's way cheaper than doing it at 60 or 70. It's very expensive. And again, you could seek somebody that could give you some guidance in that. I have a rider or insurance policy, but it's going to only pay a portion of it because I waited too long. And you've got to weigh out the cost benefit of it. You know, my grandfather was an Alzheimer's patient for 5 years in a nursing home. You know, we pretty much were broke at the end of the day. You know. Questions, comments?
What do the facts say about not opinion, facts about, is it more difficult today, these matters that we've talked about,
Right.
comparatively to, let's say, 1950 or 60, whatever? Is it more difficult to live today financially than it was then?
The
Or
cost,
is it all proportional?
the costs are higher from an inflation perspective. And it's pretty easy to get those numbers and say, okay, in 1980, what were these numbers? Okay? And compare them to today's dollars. Now, the dollar has devalued. That's why you need more of them. Okay, from the inflation perspective. So let's say in 1980, I was making $14,000 a year. Okay, I had a house, I had a house payment, you know, full house, small house, but at least I was able to buy a house for only $14,000. Now, even if you made $140,000, it would be tough to get a comparable house today with the same, you know, size house. I suppose put it that way.
And like inflation.
Yep, that's the biggest thing that's eating it up. And when the government's spending what they're spending, that's only gonna, you know, if they've gotta spend $2 trillion extra just to pay the bills and interest, that just makes everything go higher.
But the things that Dove exposed in the last year,
Mhm.
spending, where's the money going, that kind of thing.
Right, but you're still at deficit spending for a long time until you figure that out.
Right.
And then you still have 38 trillion in debt you gotta pay off.
And they still wanna create more programs for
Right.
more types of people.
So I think the takeaway from my perspective is things are gonna cost more money. You need to save intentionally, you need to give intentionally, and you need to have a plan that you kind of follow. Now, Dave Ramsey, Crown, anybody, Ron Blue, anybody you look at, you know, can give you these things, but it's 95% of it. 5% is actually figuring out what to do. 95% of it is actually doing it. Okay? It's the fortitude to do it. It's like anything. If you want to go on a diet, right? It's not that hard. It isn't, it isn't. But I'm just saying, you know what to do, but it's 95% of actually doing it. Same thing with your financial fitness. You've got to get a baseline, which is what this is. Here's where we're at. Here's what my goals and desires are. Here's what I'm willing to do. Here's what I'm not willing to do. And it's got to blend. You know.
So obviously there are verses about the sparrow and all that stuff. A lot of this seems points towards, well, everything is futile. So what then?
I wouldn't say futile. I'd say you need to have an understanding of where you are right now. Okay. And if you're, you know, let's say your $10 an hour job isn't working, then you got to find a job that pays more, or you have to cut your expenses. So I'm still very bullish on the future. I think there's great opportunities. When I look at the younger generation, I think they've got a tremendous amount of, you know, upside potential. I've been through technology. We started with lead, went through the first round of technology, went through the second round of technology. It's just a tool. Okay, you just have to understand the tool. We were using, you know, Google's AI 10 years ago. In the cloud. So it's just a tool for what you want to get done. So I think there's, again, I'm still bullish on what the future is, but you need a plan and you need to be diligent and you need to work for it. You can't just be passive with it, because it will be futile at that point in time. It's got to be intentional. And the ones that are intentional, the ones that are willing to have the fortitude to go through it, I think will be successful. That's been my experience. But I still think that the younger generation, that's why I get frustrated with them sometimes, because they don't see the opportunity. They see that, you know, hey, it's 4 o'clock and I'm out of here. You know, I'm going to go game until 2 o'clock in the morning. That's the part that goes like you're wasting it. You've got super opportunities and you're just not seeing it. Joey.
So, I know like Dave Ramsey's thing, when get out of debt, get to a good spot and finish good. But do you have like any suggestions or advice of, while you're getting out of debt, how to still grow financially?
Well, I think, what are you doing with the money? So, let's say it's credit card debt. You want to get the credit card debt, you want to pay it off, and, you know, there's different philosophies on how to do that. But the goal is to pay them off. Right? There's different approaches to that. The next thing is really saving money. I mean, when we first got married, I was very aggressive, and I was following real estate strategies when rates were 7%. You know, it was double that. So it didn't work out the way I had hoped. But I was building equity in certain things, but we had to work towards it. I wasn't going to save you know, my 14 grand a year when I first got married, I wasn't gonna save a lot of money, but we were still saving something, okay, and we were trying to invest in something. Real estate, for us, over the period of time, was the vehicle that got us our house and kind of got us to a nice position. But if you don't take that risk, you're not gonna do that.
Yeah, a little
Sorry.
thing that he probably can do is, check with his employer, and if they are matching their 401k at least,
Right.
that's a step forward for retirement and investment.
Right.
Because, I mean, not taking advantage of that opportunity,
Mhm.
it's, like you said, it doesn't make any sense because it's just free money.
Right, but I think the thing is, you know, have as little as debt as possible, right? And make as much money as possible and save as much money as possible. That's the key to it. We just live in a world where everything is add water and mix, you know, instantaneous. Everything's got to be, you know, I saw this, I want this, I do this, and you know, they're after the life experience. It's some self-sacrifice too. It's like, you know, how much do you have left over? $33? How much is going to the movies today? I don't even know. Is that like a mortgage payment? How much?
It's a lot.
It's like 15 or something.
15 a ticket.
You kind of depends on the theater.
Maybe 20, depending on where you go.
Really? How much is a bucket of popcorn? I have no idea.
Like 2 tickets, 2 popcorns, 2 drinks, probably around like 45 or so.
Huh.
Well,
No, we're not going to the movies, honey.
Wait 6 months and you go see it.
Yeah, I'll wait 6 years. It doesn't really matter. Yes, hopefully this, you know, was semi-helpful. Like I said, if you can foundationally figure out where you're at and then come up with where you want to go. And then I still think it's, you know, you still should have your bucket list. You should, you know, I mean, with my business travel, whatever, I've been 16 countries, multiple islands, you know, we've been on a couple mission trips, we've been, you know, I've gotten to see the world, but I try to see it from the perspective of the history of it. I traveled with a guy a long time ago, we went east and west of the Corn Belt, and, you know, boring. I said, how do you do this 50 weeks a year? And he would stop every day, get gas, and say, okay, I want a cheap room and a good steak. And we'd end up in these dive places, and he said, give me 2 blue plate specials, and it would be whatever they sold the most of. Didn't matter what it was. I was just here for the ride. And it was just a neat way to experience the life. So you don't have to spend a fortune. You could just kind of go out and actually see how other people live and just engage with them. You know, the guy taught me a lot. It was kind of interesting. But if you get to go to a different country, we went on a couple mission trips. I just remember dirt. It was all about dirt. We came home, it was dirt. They didn't have anything. They didn't have windows and doors, and you know, it was just filthy. You know, but they didn't know any better. The one model we went to, which I thought was interesting, that's why we invested in it, was a way to give them, you know, a church for a spiritual, you know, life learnings. It also gave them employment. It also gave them medical. So it got them to a point where they would stop eating sugar cane, so they'd lose all their teeth, and then, you know, they're 20 years old and didn't have teeth. Gave them other health issues. You'd educate them, and then you brought in a series of economy, okay, to give them a job. And it was just a way to get them out of the poverty cycle and into the next thing. It was a neat little microcosm of how they can get to the next step versus just giving them money, which you can still do to support, but it was nice to give them the tools to get to the next level, and then be able to get back to their kids. Anyway, any other thoughts? Budgets? Cash? Again, like I said, I don't have all the answers, but you know, if you can at least do this, it gives you a foundation to go forward and at least have the conversation with your girlfriend, spouse. You know, what does that look like? And again, from a legacy perspective, putting that at least in order, so you have all your stuff together. Going once, twice. Sold to the man in the back.
Thank you.
Jim, you want to close us out in prayer?
Thank you. Father, we just praise you and thank you for this opportunity. Steve, Father, for you taking his time, Lord God, and sharing with us, Lord, his knowledge that he's given us, his Holy Spirit, your Holy Spirit, Lord God. We thank you, Lord, that we have a man here who's willing to share his talents and his time. We thank you, Lord, that we have a place to meet without persecution. We thank you, Lord, that your Spirit is here with us. We pray, Lord God, that you would open our hearts, open our minds, and help us to take away, Lord God, that you would have us to leave. We thank you, Lord, in Jesus' name.
Amen. And I do have copies for anybody who wants one for each of the three pieces.